On a cold November night in 1974, the quiet suburban town of Amityville, New York, became the site of unimaginable horror. At 112 Ocean Avenue, a picturesque Dutch colonial home with its distinctive eye-like windows, something unspeakable happened. Inside, 23-year-old Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr. crept from room to room with a .35 caliber rifle. One by one, he killed his parents, Louise and Ronald Sr., and his 4 younger siblings, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew, as they slept peacefully in their beds. When the police arrived the next morning, summoned by Butch's frantic cries for help, they found all 6 bodies lying face down, their bedsheets soaked in blood. Strangely, there were no signs of a struggle, no cries for help heard by neighbors, and no evidence of the victims waking before their deaths. When Butch's story unraveled, he confessed to the murders but claimed he had been driven by voices, a chilling detail that would later echo through the house's dark legacy. The house stood vacant for a year before the Lutz family arrived. George and Kathy Lutz, along with their 3 children, were thrilled to find such a spacious home at a bargain price. They knew about the murders but reasoned it was just history. What could possibly harm them now? At first, the house seemed like a dream come true. But that dream quickly turned into a nightmare. On their first day, a priest came to bless the house, a common tradition. As he sprinkled holy water and prayed in one of the upstairs rooms, he suddenly stopped and turned pale. "Get out," he reportedly said in a shaken voice. When asked why, he would only mutter that the house was unclean. The Lutzes brushed off the incident. They would come to regret it. From the very first night, George Lutz felt an unease he couldn't explain. He found himself waking up every night at 3:15 a.m., the exact time Butch DeFeo had committed his gruesome crime. The temperature in the house seemed impossible to control. No matter how much wood he burned in the fireplace, George shivered constantly, as if the house itself rejected warmth. Kathy began having vivid nightmares about the murders. In these dreams, she saw the DeFeos in their final moments, helpless and terrified. She would wake up drenched in sweat, convinced she had heard gunshots echoing through the house. Their young daughter, Missy, started speaking of an imaginary friend named Jody, a pig-like creature with glowing red eyes. When Kathy asked Missy to describe Jody, the girl simply pointed to the window, where Kathy saw nothing, except for the faint reflection of her daughter's fear. Strange phenomena escalated daily. Doors slammed shut on their own. A green, viscous slime began to ooze from the walls. Crucifixes hung in the house flipped upside down. The family dog, Harry, barked incessantly at empty corners and refused to enter certain rooms. At one point, George discovered hoof-like prints in the snow outside, though no animal had been near the property. The climax of their terror came during a makeshift house blessing. Desperate, George and Kathy carried a crucifix through each room, reciting prayers. In response, the house came alive with deafening roars and voices, screaming, "Get out!" Panicked and broken, the Lutz family fled the house in the dead of night, leaving most of their belongings behind. They had lived there for just 28 days. Word of their experience spread quickly, attracting paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. During their investigation, Lorraine, a psychic medium, claimed to sense a demonic force tied to the property. One photograph taken during the investigation seemed to capture the spectral image of a small boy peering out from a doorway, a detail eerily similar to the youngest DeFeo child. Despite the Lutz's claims, skeptics accused them of fabricating the haunting for fame and fortune. But George and Kathy insisted their story was true until their deaths, passing lie detector tests to back their account. Meanwhile, subsequent owners of the house reported no paranormal activity, leaving the truth of the Amityville Horror a chilling mystery. Even now, the house at 112 Ocean Avenue stands as a symbol of terror, its story an enduring reminder that sometimes, evil leaves a mark that never fades. Whether a horrifying reality or an elaborate hoax, one thing is certain: the Amityville Horror will forever haunt the imagination of those who hear its tale.
It was the winter of 1959, and the Ural Mountains of Soviet Russia stood like a frozen fortress, shrouded in snow and mystery. 9 young hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, prepared to embark on what they believed would be the adventure of a lifetime. They were experienced mountaineers, students and recent graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, eager to test their skills against the frigid wilderness. None of them knew that their journey would end in one of the most chilling mysteries of the modern era. The group set out in late January, spirits high despite the biting cold. They laughed and took photographs along the way, documenting every step of their trek to Mount Otorten, a peak considered challenging but well within their abilities. Their diaries spoke of camaraderie, determination, and the thrill of the journey. But as they ventured deeper into the mountains, the weather grew increasingly hostile. Heavy snow and howling winds forced them off course. Eventually, they decided to set up camp on the slopes of a peak the local Mansi people called Kolit Dead Mountain. The decision to camp there seemed strange. The slope was exposed to brutal winds, but perhaps the group was too exhausted to search for better shelter. They pitched their tent, cooked a modest meal, and settled in for the night. It would be their last. When February 12th came and went without the hikers returning as planned, concern began to grow. Days turned into weeks, and search parties were finally dispatched. What they found defied explanation and sent chills through even the most seasoned rescuers. The tent was discovered first, partially buried in snow. Its entrance was intact, but the back had been slashed open from the inside, as if the group had fled in a desperate panic. Inside were the hikers' belongings: warm clothing, boots, food, all left behind. In the subzero temperatures, this was unthinkable. Why would they run out into the night without protection? Footprints, some barefoot, others in socks, led away from the tent and into the forest. Following the trail, searchers came upon a haunting sight under a large cedar tree. 2 of the hikers lay frozen in the snow, wearing little more than their underwear. A small fire had been built nearby, but it wasn't enough to save them. The tree's bark was torn and scratched, as if they had frantically tried to climb it. Above them, broken branches hinted at something or someone, terrifying them from below. Not far from the cedar tree, 2 more bodies were found, including that of Igor Dyatlov. They were lying in the snow, facing the direction of the tent, as if trying to return. Like the others, they were woefully underdressed for the brutal cold. Months later, as the snow melted, the final 4 hikers were discovered in a ravine farther from the campsite. Their condition was even more disturbing. One woman's tongue was missing, her face mangled as if by a great force. Another had massive chest fractures, the kind typically seen in high-speed car accidents, yet there were no external wounds to explain the trauma. Even stranger, some of their clothing contained traces of radiation. As investigators pieced together the scene, the mystery only deepened. What could have driven these experienced hikers to flee their tent in such a frenzy? Why were they so poorly dressed? And what could have caused the catastrophic injuries to some of them, injuries no ordinary avalanche could explain? The Soviet authorities concluded that the group had been killed by an unknown compelling force, an explanation as vague as it was unsatisfying. The case was classified for decades, fueling rumors of government cover-ups and sinister experiments. Theories flourished, each more unsettling than the last. Some believed the hikers had stumbled upon a secret military test, perhaps involving chemical or radioactive weapons. Others whispered about extraterrestrial encounters, pointing to reports of strange orange lights in the sky around the time of the incident. The local Mansi people were briefly suspected, but there was no evidence to support this theory. More grounded explanations emerged over the years. An avalanche, hypothermia-induced madness, or even a sudden infrasound phenomenon that could have caused hallucinations and panic. Yet none of these theories accounted for all the strange details: the missing tongue, the radiation, the injuries resembling a car crash. In recent years, modern simulations suggested that a small slab avalanche could have caused the panic and injuries. The hikers, startled by the snow, may have fled in confusion, only to succumb to the elements. But skeptics argue this still doesn't explain the full scope of the mystery. Today, the area is known as Dyatlov Pass, named in memory of the group's leader. It has become a place of pilgrimage for hikers, researchers, and paranormal enthusiasts alike, all drawn by the enigma of what happened that fateful night. Was it nature's wrath, human error, or something more sinister? The truth remains elusive, hidden beneath layers of snow and time. For now, the Dyatlov Pass incident endures as a chilling reminder of how little we understand about the forces that shape our world, and the horrors that may lie just beyond our comprehension.